All right, we're back. We've been talking about strings. In our last video, we were talking specifically about substring. This is a method or a command coming out of the string class. Most importantly, it returns a string. Similar to char@, gives you a single character at an index. Substring is going to give you kind of a range of characters, just a subsection of the given string. Note that this first index is inclusive, meaning that it will be part of our resulting string. This index is exclusive, meaning it will not. Let's look at a quick example, then we'll move on. Right? If I have hello world and we do a substring from 0 to 5, well, 0 will be part of the substring, the resulting string. This index 5 will not. It is exclusive. So that is the section that we're going to get, 0 up to 5. One super important thing I told you is that if you take the difference of the parameters, that'll tell you how long the string is. For instance, this call of substring, we're doing 5,6. The resulting string is going to have a length of 1. And this is a kind of a clever way to mimic char@, but it gets you a string instead of a single character. Note that even though this is a single character, it's technically a string. We got double quotes indicating that it is, in fact, a string. Okay, 7 to 13. This is a difference of 6, so whatever string this is, it's going to have a length of 6. It's going to have 6 characters. Okay, so that's the gist of substring. Note that we can use length to kind of dynamically reference the end. That's super important, especially when we don't know how long the string is. For instance, inside of our coding bat methods that we've been writing. Okay, this is where we left off. There's an alternate version of substring that will return a new string consisting of all the characters from the specified index, inclusive through the rest of the string. What? This looks almost identical to the substring we've been talking about, except there's only one integer here instead of the 2. So let's kind of look at an example. I have greeting with the contents hello world. I'm going to do a substring of greeting at index 7, just one integer. Right? If we were to do this, we're going to get world. Let's visually look at it, right? We can clearly see that this capital W is at index 7. What's going to happen is that this version of substring is going to start here and go through the rest of the string. Right? So from 7 on, that is what we're getting. Let's look at another example. We're going to start at index 4 and go through the rest of the string. Okay, index 0, that would give you everything. We're going to start at the index 0 and go through the rest of the string. Okay, so there's 2 versions of substring. How can the compiler, essentially, how can the computer know which one you're using? Well, it all depends on the parameters. Right? We have differing parameters. The substring that we just talked about only takes in 1 integer. This version takes in 2. And that's it. Whenever you call substring and you provide 1 integer, you're calling this version. This version that'll start at this index, inclusive, and go through the rest of the string. If you provide 2 integers when you call substring, you're going to use this version. It's going to start at this index, inclusive, and go up to this index, exclusive. The version of substring that is called depends on how many parameters are used in the method call. So here's some examples. Methods with the same name and the same class, such as substring, with different parameters that are said to be overloaded. So we have a word for this. I have 2 versions of substring. They have differing parameters. Notice that they're both in the string class. That's what this means over here. This method substring is defined in the string class. This method substring is defined in the string class. So I have methods with the same name in the same class, but the parameters are different. We would say that substring is overloaded. Okay, here are some more examples of overloaded methods. These are just hypothetical methods. We have my method, defined twice in my class, but notice that the parameters are different, right? In the sense that this one takes an integer, this one takes in a string. Here I have this version. These are technically different, right? So this is technically overloaded. This wouldn't quite work, right? On this one, we take in an int and a double. On this one, we take in a double and an int. The order here does matter. That's what we're trying to show. If you were to kind of flip the order, this would just be impossible. This would be a syntax error. This method couldn't exist to begin with. Okay, so with that in mind, let's take a look at the string API again. You can click on this if you're in the slides, or you can Google search string API. We took a look at this in a previous video. Here's everything the string can do. There's a lot of text here, but we're most interested in method summary. What I'd like to do is look for overloaded methods, right? Only one version of char app. Here's a contents equals that's technically overloaded. This one takes in a char sequence. This one takes in a string buffer. Copy value of, right? This is overloaded. This particular one takes in a char array. We'll talk more about arrays later. This one takes in a char array as well as two integers. Format. Most of these we really won't get into. Index of is a method that we will talk about extensively. And here's a version that takes in an integer. Here's a version that takes in a string. Here's a version that takes in a character, an integer, as well as a second integer. This one takes in a string as well as an integer. So index of, in this case, is overloaded 4 times, right? All of these are defined in the string class. Index of, index of, index of, index of. Note that they all have differing parameters. Okay, so that is the idea behind an overloaded method. And substring is overloaded. It's not a super big deal, but it can help us out. You do need to know it. Like, I am going to ask you quiz and test questions on it. But let's take a look at a coding bat that we've actually already done. This is coming out of the string one class, our subsection category, and it's called extra end. This is the one where we get the last 2 characters of the input string, the parameter, and then we produce a string that is just that 3 times. What we did is we made a local variable. We then used substring that takes in 2 integers. Right? The comma here is kind of how we can tell where one starts and one ends. But we're going to take a substring of str. That's the string that's coming in as a parameter. We're going to start at this index -2. Let's use hello as an example, which has a length of 5. So we're going to do 5 minus 2. That's index 3. Right? If I count out my indices, we're going to go 1, 2, 3. I don't want to confuse you too much here. Let's try that again. We're going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is index 3 here. Right? Another way to think about it is that we're 2 from the end. 1, 2. That's really what's happening. We're going, in theory, index 5 would be like out here, out of bounds. So when I subtract 2, I'm going to go 2 in. We're right here at this index. So we're going to start at this index and go through string.length. Again, in this example, that is 5. So I'm using these numbers here. The math will be done on the spot. Realities are this is like a str substring 3, 5 if str has the contents hello. Okay. In this case, we have a string length of 2. So we're going to take 2 minus 2. That gives us 0. We again have a string length of 2. So if our string was just AB, we're going to start at index 0 and go through index 2. Index 2 is not included, which that would give us an index out of bounds if we did try to access that index. Okay, I do all this to say, anytime that you do this, anytime you call this version of substring, you provide 2 parameters, and the second parameter is the length of the string, you could have used this version of substring, the one that we just talked about. In the string, we're going to do a substring starting at length -2. This has a length of hello. I'm sorry, this has a length of 5. So -2 is a length of 3. So we're going to start at index 3 and just go through the rest of the string. Right, if I hit go, we'll see that this is also a solution. I got them all correct. And we're just using the overloaded version of substring. It's a lot less text. And once you start using this and it becomes, part of your arsenal, this is a lot cleaner as well, right? I see this, I know we're going to start here and go through the rest of the string. Okay. Let's knock out some more coding bats. Now that we know both versions of substring, I believe we already did first 2. Let's take a look at first half. Now, we're not necessarily going to use the new version of substring for all of these, the overloaded version, but we will likely use substring. It says given a string of even length, they tell us it's even, that's important. return the first half. So the string woohoo yields woo. Okay, I may let you think for a moment. This may be a good spot to pause if you want to attempt it on your own. But looking at this, the first thing I want to ask is, what is the length? The length here is 6. Okay, well, why is that important? The length here on this one is 8, right? I'm sorry, 10. We got 5 and we got 5. This one has a length of 10. This one's got a length of 6. So the length of the string varies. That's important because we're trying to get the first half. The beginning is kind of always going to be the same, index 0, but where we stop is going to change. In the case of woohoo, right? If I just gave you this and I told you I wanted woo, from that, you can do a substring starting at index 0 and going up to 0, 1, 2, 3. So the question is, how do we get index 3 dynamically? If we're talking about hello there, we're going to start at index 0 and go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to index 5. So how do we get index 5 dynamically? Simply put, the length. We'll use the length and get the halfway point. Why don't I actually do that first, and then we'll kind of go up in level. So I'm going to do integer half. This is just going to be the halfway point. So if I take str dot length, right, this one has a length of 6, and I just simply divide that by 2. In my example, that should give me index 3. Easy enough. I just need to return a substring of str beginning at index 0, right? We're always starting at index 0 because we're getting the first half up to this point. Okay. It's really that easy. We're just going to take the length of the string, divide by 2. That'll tell me the halfway point. Now, they tell us that the string length is even because if it's odd, we could have some difficulties, but we'll talk about that when we cross that bridge. You'll note that I created this integer, I stored a value in it, I immediately use that value, and I don't do anything else with this variable. That means that we could just do this at the point of return. At the point of return, I'm going to take a substring of str beginning at index 0, going through half of the string. That's the first half. I'm going to hit go to show that we got it all right. And we're going to move on to the next one. This one says without n. Given a string, return a version without the first and last char. So hello yields L. The string length will be at least 2. Okay, that's important. I'll let you think about why it's important that it needs to be at least 2. But we have hello. We're going to start at this index and go up to here. So this has a length of 5. This one has a length of 4. This one has a length of 6. So our length can vary, which means we need to program this dynamically so that it changes based on length. I'm going to jump straight to the point of return. And we're going to do a substring of str. I'm going to begin at this index in each of them. Right? If this is 0, that makes this 1. So we'll start at index 1. Something I should note as I'm doing this, we can't delete from a string. Right? This looks like we took hello and we're deleting the H and the O. The way that you want to think about this is we are keeping a section of the string. I'm choosing to keep this. I'm basically selecting this portion. Right? So we'll do a substring of str beginning at index 1 going up to this one. That one is not included. Again, because the string length can vary, we need to vary our output based on that. So we're going to go up to the length, but back 1. I'm going to hit go. We'll see that this works. And I'll quickly talk about some numbers as to why. If we use hello as an example, we're saying we're going to do a substring of str at index 1. Notice that is just hard-coded in there. But we're going to take the length of our string. In this example, it's 5. Minus 1 is index 4. So we're going to do a substring of this beginning at index 1, going up to index 4, inclusive, exclusive, right? So the E will be included. Well, this is 0, 1, 2, 3. This is index 4 here. So we're going to go up to that. It will not actually be included because this is exclusive. Again, another way that you could think about it is the resulting string will have a length of 3 just by taking the difference of the parameters. And that's what we want. Let's look at the next one. Combo string. Given two strings A and B, return a string of the form short, long, short. With the shorter string on the outside, the longer string on the inside. The strings will not be the same length, but they may be empty. They may have a length of 0. So here's an example. We see we have two strings coming in, A and B. We ultimately need to return a string, of course. In this example, the first string has a length of 5. This string has a length of 2. They flip these to show you that the output should still be the same. So what this means is we can't assume that the first string, string A, is the longer one. We need to actually check it. Think for a moment. Maybe a good spot to pause. We're going to need to use if statements here. Okay. I'm going to show you several different levels to this, right? So we'll do if A dot length is greater than B dot length. Okay, something to note here. A is a string. A dot length is an integer. It's how long the string is, how many characters. B is a string. B dot length is an integer. So what I'm comparing here are two integers. I'm asking, is A longer than B? If it is, I want it on the inside. Right? Simply put, we can return A plus B plus A. Again, noting that A and B are strings, and so I'm just adding them together. Oh, sorry, I inverted that. It should be B, A, B, because I want the short string. If this is true, right, if this is true, it means that B is the short string, so it goes on the outside. Otherwise, if I hit this else, what it means is, I'll leave it as a comment, that B.length is greater than or technically equal to, I guess they told us they won't be equal. The strings will not be the same length, but technically that's what this means. If I hit this point, B is technically the longer string, so it should be in the middle. I'm going to return A plus B plus A. Why don't we buck this out a little bit so it's not interfering with our code. And I'm going to hit the go button. And you see that we got them all right. So this is the first time we've seen an if statement in regard to our strings, checking the lengths of them. One way that we could actually level this up some is getting rid of the else. Okay, this is working on the fact that whenever we hit a return statement, we're actually just going to piece out of the method. Right? I'm going to hit the go button to show you that we're getting the exact same thing, that all are correct. And so what happens is, if A is longer, we're going to enter the body of the if statement. We're going to do this. It's a return statement. We're going to leave. If this is false, we'll skip over the body, leaving us with only one thing, this. We're going to return this and leave. Note that even though I have two return statements, only one of them is actually going to execute due to the nature of us leaving whenever we return. Right? One thought is, if this is true, we're going to return this, and then we're going to return this. And that's just simply not true, because once we hit this return statement, we leave the method. Another technique I will show you, which I think is pretty valid. That one was, this problem was really short, but I would consider making some variables, right? String short. Sorry. Short is a reserved word. That's one of our data types. How about we just leave it at 3 letters? String show. You can initialize it here, right? And string long. Long is also a reserved word, by the way. So we'll just do long. So I'm going to create these two strings. If this is true, it means that A is the long one, B is the short one, right? So instead of returning on the spot, what I'm going to do is say that our show string is going to be, which is the short one, B. Our long string is going to be A. Okay. If I hit this else, it means this. That B is actually the long one. Technically, it means they could also be equal, but we're going to say that B is the long one. So show in that case is A. Lawn in that case is B. So I'm creating these variables. Yes, I know this is a little bit longer, but I just want you to think about it. I just want to show you this approach. I create these variables, and then I'm going to give them values. At the very end, I'm going to return short plus long plus short. Right? Short plus long plus short. Let's hit the go button, see that we're getting a correct solution, and then we'll talk about it for a moment. I create these variables. If this is true, it means A is the long one, B is the short one. Otherwise, it must mean that A is the short one and B is the long one. Regardless, I should have the correct strings stored in these variables by the time I hit this return statement. One advantage I would say about this is it's very clear, kinda, other than the fact that I wish I could use these literal words. It's very clear that we're going in the order short, long, short. When it's like B plus A plus B, it's kind of unclear. One thing I will say to kind of level this up a little bit more is going to be the same strategy, but I'm going to get rid of all of this. And instead, I'm going to initialize values here. This approach assumes that A is the short one, B is the long one. We'll actually check, and if this is true, we'll change it. Otherwise, short and long will have the original values whenever we get down to here. Beautiful. So this is functioning as an if-else statement, but we drastically reduce the number of lines, so there's a lot less that we have to read. So this assumes that A is the shortest and that B is the longest. We're going to perform a check. If this is true, we'll change it. If this is false, they will stay their original values regardless. Show, long, and show should have the short, long, and short saved in them. All right, let's do one more. This one's called nonstart. Given two strings, return their concatenation, except omit the first char of each. The strings will be at least length 1. Two strings coming in, one string coming out. I basically want to take the first one and just get everything but the first character. I want to take the second string, string B, and get everything but the first character, and add those together. Easy enough. Notice that their lengths can change, so our code needs to be dynamic. It needs to reference their length. So, simply put, I'm just going to do this at the point of return. We're going to take string A and do a substring of it, beginning at index 1. Don't forget, these things start at index 0. So index 1 is actually this second character here. We're going to start at index 1 and go through the rest of the string. In this case, string A. That's the one that we're talking about. All right. Just 3 coding bat problems ago, I told you that if you ever do this, you could just use the overloaded version of substring, right? This version of substring that we got introduced to today is going to start at the specified index and go through the rest of the string. So in this case, I want to start at index 1 and go through the rest of the string. Right? Simply put, we could do this. We're going to go into A and get a substring, starting at index 1 and going through the rest of the string. Index 1 through the rest of the string. Index 1 through the rest of the string. We want to add that to B dot substring. Same thing. We want to start at index 1, go through the rest of the string. And there we have it. What I'd like you to note is if we just stuck to the single version of substring, you're going to end up with some code that looks like this. All right, it looks like there's a lot more going on, and it's just unnecessary because there is an overloaded version of substring, and we can reduce it by a lot. All right, we're going to pause there, and I'll see you in the next one.